scissors and cut them. I just left them laying there. And Mark Rothbaum come in to see me and said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I think this medicine might be having a bad effect on me." And I pulled.
Willie Nelson's life is nothing short of extraordinary. At 91, he's overcome personal loss, financial ruin, and public scandal, all while securing his legacy as one of country music's greatest icons. His journey hasn't been easy, but it has been undeniably impactful. Yet, Willie's story isn't just about his own rise to fame. It's also deeply intertwined with that of Kris Kristofferson, another legend who, alongside Willie, redefined the landscape of country music. Their careers, full of rebellion, triumph, and camaraderie, forged a new path for artists seeking authenticity over conformity. Together, they didn't just leave their mark, they reshaped the very essence of what country music could be. In the 1960s, Nashville held a firm grip on country music, dictating not just the sound, but also the image of its stars. The industry was all about the formula: clean-cut artists, perfectly polished performances, and songs that adhered to the traditions of heartbreak, drinking, and small-town life. The focus was on creating radio-friendly stars who could be easily marketed, with every aspect of their appearance and behavior scrutinized. This was a Nashville that didn't leave much room for anything beyond the established rules. But two men would challenge everything Nashville had built. They were outsiders, artists who refused to be shaped into the mold that the industry demanded. Willie Nelson had come to Nashville in the late 1950s, hoping to break through as a performer. But instead of fame, he found himself relegated to the background as a songwriter. While he wrote some of the biggest hits of the era, like Crazy for Patsy Cline and Hello Walls for Farron Young, his own music was largely ignored. The industry couldn't understand him. His voice was rough around the edges, his delivery unconventional, and his ideas about music far too progressive for the system. He wasn't the clean-cut, polished figure Nashville wanted, and despite his immense talent, he struggled to get his own work recognized. On the other hand, Kris Kristofferson's path was shaped by an entirely different set of circumstances. A war hero, a poet, and a Rhodes Scholar, Kris had every opportunity to take a prestigious career in the military or academia. But instead, he chose to follow his passion for music, working his way into the heart of Nashville. Yet, like Willie, he found himself at odds with the industry's rigid standards. His songs were deep, filled with emotional rawness and complex themes, suffering, regret, existential crisis, things that country radio simply didn't know how to market. Kris was the intellectual, the outsider, and Nashville didn't know what to do with him either. Both men had a gift that the industry couldn't seem to recognize. Willie, a brilliant songwriter and musician, was never allowed to shine on his own terms, and Kris, an artist of great depth and lyricism, was too much of a rebel to fit the conventional mold of a country star. In a city built on rules and polished images, both Willie and Kris were the square pegs that refused to fit into the round holes Nashville had carved out for them. But these two would not be silenced. Their struggles in Nashville, though difficult, were just the beginning. The path ahead would lead them both to a place where they could create the music that was true to themselves, and in doing so, change the face of country music forever. Willie Nelson's early years in Nashville were defined by his constant struggle against an industry that refused to embrace his true self. When he first arrived in the late 1950s, he carried with him a dream of becoming a performer, but the industry had other plans. Instead of nurturing his unique voice and style, Nashville tried to fit him into the traditional mold. They dressed him in suits, slicked back his hair, and pressured him to conform to a clean-cut image that didn't reflect who he was. Despite being one of the most gifted songwriters of his generation, with hits like Crazy for Patsy Cline and Hello Walls for Farron Young, Willie's own albums were falling flat. The industry's resistance to his sound became clear. His music was raw, rough, and far from what Nashville considered palatable for mainstream country radio. His unconventional voice and delivery didn't match the polished commercial standards that the city expected. Album after album, his releases failed to gain traction, and Willie began to question whether his dream was even possible within the confines of Nashville. Every time he felt he was about to break through, the industry pushed him back, rejecting his authenticity in favor of more easily marketable stars. It was a crushing blow for someone who had spent years pouring his heart into his music. The weight of Nashville's expectations was suffocating, and Willie's frustration was growing. It seemed like he was destined to remain an outsider, always on the periphery of the very industry he had hoped to conquer. Meanwhile, Kris Kristofferson's path was unfolding in a completely different way, but his journey to success was no less difficult. Though he was a highly educated war hero and poet, Kris's decision to pursue a career in country music wasn't exactly understood by the Nashville elite. He arrived in the city in the late 1960s with a burning desire to make music that was deeply personal and filled with complex emotions. But much like Willie, he found the doors of Nashville closed to him. His songs were too deep, too raw, and filled with themes that didn't align with the conventional country music that dominated the airwaves. Kris was not the pretty face or the crooning heartthrob Nashville wanted. Instead, he was an intellectual, a man of substance, with a soul-searching lyricism that seemed too much for a market built on catchy tunes about heartbreak and drinking. It wasn't until 1970 that Kris would make his breakthrough in a way that would forever alter the course of his career, and perhaps the industry itself. In one of the most legendary stunts in country music history, Kris stole a National Guard helicopter and flew it directly to Johnny Cash's house, just to hand him a demo of Sunday Morning Coming Down. This bold act wasn't just a demonstration of his commitment to his music, it was a statement that he would stop at nothing to be heard. Johnny Cash, moved by the song's raw honesty, performed it live on his television show. The performance quickly became an anthem for those disillusioned with traditional country music, and Kris Kristofferson's star was born. From that point forward, Kris's career took off. The industry, which had once dismissed him as too unconventional, now had no choice but to embrace him. His songs resonated with listeners in a way that no one had anticipated, and his reputation as a poet turned country star only grew stronger. By the mid-1970s, he had not only conquered Nashville, but he had also crossed over into Hollywood, starring in the 1976 film A Star is Born, alongside Barbra Streisand. The transition from country music's intellectual outsider to mainstream success was swift, and soon Kris was winning awards, appearing on national television, and even breaking into the world of film. In the span of a few short years, Kris Kristofferson had gone from being an underdog to a superstar, solidifying his place in both the music and film industries. But this wasn't just about fame. It was about Kris's personal revolution and his ability to defy the expectations that had been placed on him. He wasn't just a country artist. He was an artist in every sense of the word, and the world was finally starting to take notice. While Willie was still grappling with his place in the industry, Kris's success proved that it was possible to make it on your own terms. But Willie, ever the fighter, wasn't about to let Nashville's rejection keep him down for long. He had his own breakthrough waiting, one that would forever change not only his career, but the entire landscape of country music. Kris Kristofferson's advice to Willie Nelson was simple but powerful. Leave Nashville behind. In the early 1970s, Kris could see that the rigid constraints of Nashville were never going to allow Willie to truly flourish. It was a place that had tried to mold him into something he was not, a place that would never appreciate his unique style. So, Kris encouraged Willie to head to Austin, Texas, a city that was beginning to stir with a new kind of energy. Austin was different. It was a place where artists didn't have to fit the industry's mold. There, musicians could play their music without compromise, creating something real, raw, and authentic. It was a city filled with bars, honky-tonks, and a new generation of music lovers who were hungry for something beyond the polished, predictable sounds of Nashville. The Austin music scene was thriving, and it was the perfect environment for someone like Willie. It was there that he could reinvent himself, free from the constraints of the Nashville system. Austin embraced the grit and authenticity that Willie had always embodied, allowing him to break free from the past and chart his own path forward. The city was brimming with long-haired cowboys, bikers, and artists who rejected Nashville's polished formula in favor of something more personal, more real. It was here, in Austin, that Willie found the creative freedom he had longed for, a place where he could truly express himself. For Willie, the move to Austin was nothing short of transformative. He began to embrace the very things that Nashville had tried to erase: his rugged, unkempt appearance, his unconventional style, and his deeply poetic music. It was a return to his roots, to the authentic spirit of country music that had always resonated with him. In Austin, he found a community that wasn't interested in the glossy, mainstream version of country music. Instead, they were drawn to the raw, rebellious spirit that artists like Willie embodied. The outlaw movement was born out of this artistic freedom, an era where the music wasn't just about entertainment, but about truth, rebellion, and a rejection of the establishment. As Willie's transformation took hold, his music followed suit. He grew his hair out, let his beard grow wild, and abandoned the slick, clean-cut image that Nashville had tried to impose on him. He became the face of the outlaw movement, and it was in Austin that he would release Shotgun Willie, the album that would solidify his reinvention. The album marked a turning point in his career. It was raw, unapologetic, and completely unfiltered. It was an album that announced to the world that Willie Nelson was no longer playing by Nashville's rules. He was carving out his own lane, and with Shotgun Willie, he made it clear that he was a force to be reckoned with. Shotgun Willie was more than just an album. It was a declaration. It was the moment when Willie fully embraced who he was, both as an artist and as a person. His decision to release an album that was so far removed from Nashville's polished sound was a bold statement, one that would change the direction of his career. The outlaw movement began to take hold, with artists like Willie leading the charge, challenging the conventional wisdom of the Nashville establishment. They rejected the idea that country music had to be perfect, that it had to be packaged and controlled. Instead, they embraced the idea that country music should be messy, raw, and real, just like life itself. Willie's success in Austin was a testament to the power of reinvention and the importance of staying true to oneself. He had found a place where he didn't have to conform to anyone's expectations. The city gave him the freedom to explore his music on his own terms, and it was in Austin that he found the audience that truly understood him. His transformation was complete, and the outlaw movement was on the rise. Willie Nelson was no longer just a struggling songwriter. He was a leader of a movement that would reshape the entire genre of country music. Throughout the years, whispers of tension have surrounded the relationship between Willie Nelson and Kris Kristofferson. Were they rivals, constantly fighting for the same space in an already competitive country music scene? Or were they brothers, bound by a shared vision and mutual respect, but occasionally torn apart by the pressures of fame. The truth, as with many things in the world of music, is more complicated than either of those labels suggests. Both men were at the forefront of the outlaw movement, challenging the polished, formulaic sound of Nashville, and they often found themselves under the microscope of an industry that was trying to understand and categorize them. As the faces of this rebellious wave, their journeys were intertwined, yet each one faced different personal and professional battles. For Kris, the rise to fame was swift and intense. He quickly became a darling of both critics and mainstream audiences alike, his intellectual persona and deep lyrics winning him fans and accolades. Willie, on the other hand, had to claw his way through Nashville's gates, facing rejection after rejection, all while trying to find a space where his authentic self could thrive. In the early years of their careers, it seemed as if Kris had everything Willie wanted: success, critical acclaim, and a life that looked effortless on the surface. Kris's rise was fast, and his ability to navigate both the music and film industries made him a Hollywood darling. Meanwhile, Willie struggled to gain the recognition he deserved, often relegated to the shadows of the industry, despite writing some of country's most iconic songs. The dynamic between them could easily have bred jealousy, especially in an environment where competition was fierce and both men were vying for the same kind of recognition. However, the nature of their relationship was much more complex than mere rivalry. Beneath the surface, there was a profound bond, one rooted in shared struggles and mutual admiration. Kris understood the pain of rejection from Nashville, and Willie could see the emotional toll fame was taking on Kris. They were both rebels, each fighting to carve out a space for themselves in an industry that didn't know how to handle their raw, unpolished approach to music. And yet, even with this camaraderie, there were times when the pressure of their success and the weight of personal challenges pushed them apart. At the heart of the rumors surrounding their relationship was a deeper emotional tension, one that was tied to more than just the music. They were navigating the complex world of fame, addiction, and the pain that often accompanies success. This tension was only amplified by the presence of a woman who would play a significant role in both of their lives: Rita Coolidge. Kris and Rita's relationship was turbulent, filled with both intense love and destructive conflict. Kris, known for his emotional volatility, was deeply in love with Rita, but their marriage was often marred by his self-destructive tendencies, fueled by alcoholism and the pressures of fame. Rita, a talented singer and songwriter in her own right, was an enigmatic figure, captivating both men with her beauty, charm, and free-spirited energy. But it was her connection to Willie that would forever add fuel to the rumors. There were whispers in the music world, murmurs of a romantic entanglement between Willie and Rita before she married Kris. Neither Willie nor Rita ever confirmed these rumors, but the speculation was enough to cast a shadow over their friendship. The emotional tension between Kris and Willie began to grow, especially as Kris's marriage to Rita became more strained. Kris's insecurities were heightened by the rumors of a past romance between his wife and his best friend, and it's not hard to imagine how these feelings would have put a strain on their once solid relationship. Despite the turmoil surrounding Rita, both Willie and Kris were careful to maintain public respect for one another. The industry, however, couldn't ignore the undercurrents of jealousy and the awkwardness that lingered whenever Rita was around. Some sources close to the pair suggested that the dynamic between them was fraught with unspoken emotions, fueled by past relationships and the volatile nature of both their personalities. Yet, even with these tensions, their bond remained, and their mutual respect for each other's artistry never wavered. As Rita's marriage to Kris unraveled in the 1980s, it became clear that the emotional scars from their turbulent relationship would last long after the divorce. Rita later spoke openly about her marriage to Kris, admitting that while she admired his soul, the chaos and emotional instability made their connection unsustainable. Kris himself would later confess that losing Rita was one of his biggest regrets, but by then, both he and Willie were on very different paths. While Kris's career had started to lose momentum, Willie's had only continued to grow, with his success now reaching heights that Kris could only dream of. The love triangle between Willie, Kris, and Rita ultimately never fully defined their relationship, but it certainly added a layer of complexity to their friendship. There was no denying the emotional weight it carried, and the tension that arose from their shared history. Even as their careers continued to evolve, the shadow of this unspoken competition and personal conflict hung over them, never quite disappearing, but never fully breaking their bond either. In the end, the friendship between Willie and Kris survived. Complicated, fractured at times, but resilient, built on shared experiences and an understanding that the pressures of fame could never fully define their connection. As the 1970s unfolded, Willie Nelson began to rise from the shadows of Nashville, carving a path that would forever change the landscape of country music. His transformation from a struggling songwriter to a global superstar was nothing short of remarkable. The music that once went unheard in Nashville's boardrooms was now resonating with audiences around the world. Willie had found his voice, and he was no longer confined by the constraints of the industry. He had become the face of the outlaw movement, a movement that rejected the polished cookie-cutter approach of Nashville in favor of something far more raw and authentic. The outlaw sound that Willie championed was a unique blend of country, rock, folk, and blues, drawing from the many musical influences he had absorbed over the years. He transcended the limitations of traditional country music, creating a sound that was both new and familiar all at once. His ability to seamlessly weave different genres together helped him not only stand out in a sea of country artists, but also to build a diverse fan base that spanned generations and musical tastes. As the 1970s gave way to the 1980s, Willie's fame exploded. His albums went platinum, and he became a global sensation, playing sold-out shows across the United States and around the world. His concerts were legendary, not just for the music, but for the spirit of rebellion and freedom that he brought to the stage. His performances were filled with energy, honesty, and a sense of community, making each show feel like a gathering of like-minded souls. Willie had achieved something few could have imagined. He was no longer an outsider in Nashville. He had become its leader. His music resonated with people who were tired of the artificial, formulaic nature of mainstream country. Instead, they embraced the raw, unfiltered approach that Willie embodied. In many ways, he became the voice of a generation that was looking for authenticity, and his success was a testament to the power of staying true to oneself. Willie's rise to fame wasn't just about selling records, it was about changing the way people thought about country music. He had shattered the mold and created a new space for artists to follow, one where individuality and creativity were celebrated rather than stifled. But as Willie ascended to the pinnacle of his career, Kris Kristofferson, his close friend and fellow outlaw, was facing a very different reality. While Willie's star was soaring, Kris's personal and professional struggles were beginning to catch up with him. The 1970s and 1980s marked a time of turbulence for Kris, both in his career and his personal life. His rise had been swift and meteoric, but the pressures of fame, coupled with his deep-rooted battles with alcoholism, began to take a toll. Kris, who had once been the golden boy of country music, now found himself fighting to maintain his place in the industry. Kris's music, once filled with raw emotion and sharp insight, began to lose its commercial appeal. His albums no longer sold in the same numbers, and his place in the limelight began to fade. Meanwhile, Willie was at the peak of his career, breaking new ground with each release. For Kris, it was a painful reminder of the delicate nature of fame, how quickly it could slip away. His volatile personal life, filled with struggles with alcohol and a series of failed relationships, only added to the sense that he was losing his grip on the career he had worked so hard to build. While Willie embraced his new life as a global superstar, Kris's battles with his demons seemed to overshadow his achievements. His reputation for being difficult to work with, along with his personal turmoil, caused his career to spiral. Despite the critical acclaim he had received earlier in his life, Kris found himself sidelined as the industry shifted its focus to newer, younger faces. The man who had once been at the center of the outlaw movement now struggled to keep his footing in an industry that had changed so quickly around him. Kris's story during this period was a stark contrast to Willie's, who had become a symbol of resilience and reinvention. While Willie's fame only grew, Kris found himself fighting against the tide of personal demons and professional setbacks. But despite the challenges, Kris never lost his love for music, and he continued to perform and create, even as his place in the industry became less certain. The two men's paths were diverging, but their connection, rooted in their shared experiences, would remain a defining part of both their careers. Throughout Willie Nelson's legendary career, his personal struggles became as well known as his music. His journey was never free from controversy. One of the most publicized challenges came in the 1990s, when the IRS came after him for a staggering $16.7 million in unpaid taxes due to bad financial advice and tax shelters that went sour. The media had a field day with his legal troubles, often making headlines and portraying him as a man on the brink of losing everything. Along with his tax scandal, Willie was arrested multiple times for marijuana possession, a symbol of his free-spirited lifestyle that he never tried to hide or apologize for. These legal battles, combined with a tumultuous personal life filled with multiple marriages, affairs, and family challenges, painted a picture of a man whose life was anything but conventional. Yet despite these constant hurdles, Willie remained steadfast in his love for music. His personal issues did little to diminish his status as an icon. If anything, his ability to face adversity head-on only deepened the connection his fans had with him. While the media focused on his troubles, Willie continued to make music, perform, and stay true to his rebellious nature. His music became a reflection of his life, raw, unfiltered, and filled with the honesty that had always defined him. Through every scandal, every challenge, Willie remained at the heart of country music, an indomitable spirit who refused to be broken by the world around him. His success was a testament to his resilience. Even in the face of adversity, Willie continued to thrive, proving that his music and legacy were stronger than any of the personal battles he had to fight. Whether it was through his music, his humor, or his willingness to be unapologetically himself, Willie proved time and time again that no matter what the world threw at him, he would rise above it. His ability to transform his struggles into a source of strength and inspiration was one of the reasons he remained beloved by his fans and respected by his peers. Reflecting on the relationship between Willie and Kris Kristofferson, it's clear that despite the rumors and struggles that defined their careers, their friendship remained a constant. Their bond was built on mutual respect and an understanding of the challenges they both faced in an industry that didn't always embrace their authenticity. Both men navigated a world that sought to pigeonhole them, yet they refused to conform, instead pushing boundaries and changing the direction of country music forever. They didn't just alter the genre with their music, They reshaped it with their lives, creating a new path for artists who wanted to stay true to themselves. The friendship between Willie and Kris was more than just a professional partnership. It was a brotherhood forged in the fires of struggle and triumph. Despite the personal issues, the competition, and the tensions that arose over the years, their bond endured. They saw in each other not just artists, but kindred spirits, each driven by the same rebellious energy and the desire to create music that was raw, real, and honest. Their friendship may have had its ups and downs, but in the end, it stood as a testament to the power of mutual respect and shared vision. As both men aged, their impact on the world of country music and beyond became undeniable. They didn't just create a sound, they created a movement, one that embraced authenticity over polish, rebellion over conformity, and truth over industry expectations. Their influence will live on in the artists who followed in their footsteps, and their friendship remains a reminder of how powerful and enduring the bonds between true artists can be. Together, they shaped a legacy that will last for generations, not just in the music they created, but in the lives they touched along the way. The story of Willie Nelson and Kris Kristofferson is one of resilience, camaraderie, and the bravery to defy convention. Together, they didn't just shape country music, they redefined it, pushing boundaries and creating a new path for future generations of artists. Through their struggles and triumphs, they forged a legacy that continues to inspire. Their impact goes beyond music. It's a testament to the power of authenticity, rebellion, and the unwavering spirit of artistry. Willie and Kris will forever be remembered as legends whose influence echoes through the country music landscape, shaping not only the sound of today, but the very spirit of what it means to be a true artist.